Welcome back to Cinema Recaps. Today, I will introduce a Russian horror and sci-fi movie released in 2020 called Sputnik. Spoiler alert, the movie contains spoilers. Be cautious. In 1983, a spacecraft carrying 2 astronauts is orbiting Earth. One of them sings and jokes about reporting his colleague to the control center for not singing along. They talk about their plans when they return, while the control center checks their status. Acosta opens the spacecraft latch, preparing for the separation from the module. The other astronaut continues singing as the spacecraft reaches landing position. Suddenly, an object collides with the spacecraft. After regaining control, the astronaut who was singing sees something outside the window, moving towards the spacecraft's door. A moment later, a parachute appears in the sky over Kazakhstan, Soviet Union. Semiradov, a man on horseback, approaches the crashed spacecraft. He turns on his flashlight, discovering one astronaut dead outside the spacecraft. The other astronaut struggles to crawl out, barely managing to stand up. When the astronaut looks up, blood is pouring from his mouth, and his eyes are completely black. Next, a woman enters the meeting room of the Brain Research Institute in Moscow. The meeting room is prepared for a hearing. The council members walk in and begin questioning Tatiana, a doctor under investigation for possibly injuring a patient. The colleagues on the council have no doubts about her methods, but believe she acted recklessly. Tatiana defends herself, claiming she only did what was necessary for a misdiagnosed patient. When the hearing ends, a man approaches Tatiana in the hallway. He introduces himself as Colonel Semiradov and asks for her advice on a patient. He reveals that he also runs a special research institute and is involved in the field of neuropsychiatry. Tatiana, initially hesitant, becomes increasingly interested as he shares more details. Semiradov promises to take her to see the patient, and if she doesn't want to take on the task, he'll bring her back. On the helicopter ride, they discuss the patient. Tatiana asks to see the medical records of this person. Instead of providing the records, Semiradov gives Tatiana an oral report. He explains that the patient is one of the 2 astronauts from the orbit of 4 spacecraft. He reveals that some information has been withheld from the media. Konstantin, the surviving astronaut, is suffering from amnesia. Unable to recall the events that occurred in space before the spacecraft landed, Tatiana asks if she needs to sign a non-disclosure agreement, especially considering that a Soviet national hero like Konstantin might have lost his mind. They arrive in Kazakhstan and continue their journey by car to a research institute. Here, Semiradov tells Tatiana she can move freely within 90% of the institute's areas, and after receiving clearance, she can also enter restricted zones. Both enter the elevator and head down to the observation room. Meanwhile, Konstantin is being hypnotized by a psychiatrist. Tatiana observes the hypnosis session through a glass window. The psychiatrist attempts to extract information from Konstantin, but he only jokes around. The doctor grows frustrated, saying he cannot help if Konstantin refuses to cooperate. Konstantin coughs, leaving the doctor puzzled. He claims that he can't be hypnotized, as only the strongest minds are selected for space travel. Dr. Rajel enters the observation room and greets Semiradov. Semiradov introduces him as the head of research at the institute. Suddenly, Konstantin slams against the glass, shouting to ask what happened to his colleague. Tatiana asks Colonel Semiradov what he needs from her, and he replies that he needs her professional opinion on Konstantin's condition. She walks into the opposite room through the glass and introduces herself. Konstantin seems pleased that someone other than Rajel is talking to him. Tatiana offers him a cup of tea, which he gladly accepts and drinks. During this time, she closely observes his every action and then explains the reason for her presence. Tatiana notices a toy in the corner of the room and asks Konstantin about it. He says that it's his, a part of the tradition of astronauts. When she asks about what happened during the mission, Konstantin hesitates, noting that she hasn't read the files. However, he recounts that the mission went smoothly until the landing phase, after which he remembers nothing except waking up at the research institute. Konstantin quickly realizes that Tatiana cannot help him escape, but when she suggests that she could help in another way, he gives her his mother's name and phone number, asking her to report that he is safe and well. Before leaving, Tatiana picks up the teacup, saying that she was glad to meet him. When handing the teacup to Rajel, he flinches, having burned his hand. Tatiana explains to Colonel Semiradov that Konstantin may be suffering from PTSD and that his sensory nervous system or peripheral nervous system could have been damaged. After making her assessment, she suggests that she should leave. Semiradov agrees, saying that she can leave the next morning. On the way back to her room, the soldier accompanying her explains that leaving requires Colonel Semiradov's approval. As they pass through an area, Tatiana sees a group of people working under supervision. When she asks about them, the soldier replies that they are prisoners brought in for hard labor. He leads her to the break room, saying that she's the only one in this building. Tatiana enters the room, opens her luggage, and tries to make a call outside, but is told that only Colonel Semiradov has the authority to make calls from the base. That night, she takes a shower, revealing a large scar on her back. Tatiana takes painkillers and then goes to bed. However, unable to sleep, she goes out for a run. While running, she unexpectedly encounters one of the prisoners. When she returns to her room, there's a knock on the door. It's Semiradov. He takes her back to the observation room and asks her when the last time she ate was. After she answers, he checks the clock and orders to begin. The glass separating the room from Konstantin's area lowers. Soldiers enter, locking the door shut. Tatiana and the others watch through the security cameras. Konstantin's body starts to convulse abnormally. Then he falls off the bed. Something starts to spill out of Konstantin's mouth. The strange shape morphs and slowly transforms into an alien creature. Tatiana stands frozen, horrified by the scene before her. Colonel Semiradov asks Tatiana if she wants to see the creature up close. She steps up to the glass, observing it. The creature appears, staring at her, and she doesn't take her eyes off it. When Tatiana reaches out as if to touch it, the creature suddenly lunges at the glass. Shocked and terrified, she quickly leaves the room. Semiradov follows her and explains that this creature doesn't belong to Earth. Tatiana wants to know if Konstantin is aware that the creature is living inside him, but it seems he has no idea. The colonel suggests that Tatiana find a way to separate the host from the parasite, or leave and sign a confidentiality agreement. When she asks why he chose her for this mission, Semiradov replies that he needs someone willing to take risks to save the national hero. Tatiana agrees, but demands all video footage, careful testimonies, and notes related to the creature. She needs to work with Konstantin twice a day, each session lasting 1 hour. The colonel is pleased and agrees. While reviewing the materials, Tatiana discovers that Konstantin was once taken to a rehabilitation center, but on the first night, the creature appeared and killed a medical staff member. He was then transferred to the current facility for experiments to separate the creature from his body, but all attempts failed. Without the creature inside, Konstantin's vital signs drastically drop, but with the creature, he has incredible regenerative abilities. When in its dormant state, the creature takes up very little space in Konstantin's body. But when it emerges, it can grow up to 1.5 meters in length. When it escapes the body, it secretes a toxin that renders Konstantin unconscious. Once outside, the creature can survive for about 1 hour and 40 to 50 minutes. And this appearance time is always consistent every night. Tatiana wonders, is this creature a parasite or a symbiont? In the next scene, Konstantin is exercising under the supervision of a doctor. When the doctor reminds him not to overexert himself, Konstantin replies that he feels fine, only experiencing a slight itch in his throat. Tatiana continues to review the footage of the creature and takes notes on the numbers. Rogel enters, and she asks about the whereabouts of Konstantin's son, but he doesn't give a clear answer. When she asks what the creature eats, Rogel says it consumes the same kind of food that Konstantin eats. Tatiana tries to build a rapport with Rogel, but he dismisses her and tells her to talk to Colonel Semiradov instead. Tatiana then uses the colonel's office to call the orphanage where Konstantin's son is staying. Meanwhile, a paralyzed child suddenly stands up to get something, but is caught and scolded by a nurse. The next day, Tatiana goes to Konstantin's room to begin their session. She tells him that the people who brought her to the institute believe that he has lost his mind and killed his teammate. Rogel and the colonel are eavesdropping from the other side of the glass. Rogel seems displeased with Tatiana's questions, while the colonel appears confused. Konstantin is also puzzled, not understanding why they think that and whether that is the only reason he's been confined behind the bulletproof glass. Tatiana asks him directly who he is, and Konstantin responds, "A hero." Tatiana challenges him, questioning the heroism in going to space, and quickly shifts to talking about his son, accusing him of abandoning the boy. Konstantin is offended and demands that she leave the session. After leaving the room, Tatiana tells them to check Konstantin's endocrine system, suggesting that if they understand his hormone levels under stress, they might figure out what the creature really needs to eat. She then proposes to the colonel that Konstantin be moved to a civilian area during the day. so they can assess his condition in a more realistic environment. Semiradov agrees and arranges for Konstantin to have a regular room. Tatiana enters Konstantin's room, apologizes to him, and explains the reason she had to ask such uncomfortable questions during the previous session. Konstantin shares that he had no idea about the existence of his son. He was only notified when the boy's mother passed away a week before the mission. Before Tatiana leaves, he asks her one more question, the real reason why he's being kept here. However, Tatiana cannot answer that question. That night, Tatiana goes to the observation room to look at the alien creature. She lightly taps the glass to get its attention, then crouches down and waits. When the creature appears, she lies down, and it mimics her actions. As she stands up, Tatiana accidentally drops Konstantin's toy and notices the way the creature stares at it. She asks to be allowed into the laboratory to approach the creature. Colonel Semiradov agrees, and she is equipped with a protective suit. Upon entering the room, Tatiana places the toy down. The creature immediately crawls toward it and wraps around the toy. She wants to touch the creature, but slips and falls down. The creature grabs her and pulls her in. At that moment, Semiradov turns on the bright lights to startle the creature, and Tatiana is safely pulled out of the room. After the incident, Colonel Semiradov enters the room himself to face the creature. Later that night, while Tatiana is in her room, Semiradov enters without warning. She begins to explain what she deduced from the incident with the toy. According to her, the creature and Konstantin may share the same consciousness, because the way the creature reacted to his toy shows a connection between them. Tatiana speculates that the creature and Konstantin don't entirely share a common consciousness, but the creature's response to the toy indicates a strong bond between them. This is significant for Konstantin. Furthermore, she believes that each night, the creature spends more time outside Konstantin's body, and one day, it will no longer need him. Tatiana asks Colonel Semiradov to take them to Moscow for additional research resources, but he refuses, saying that it's not possible because they don't fully understand the creature yet. Later, Tatiana speaks with Rajel and notices something unusual in the footage. When she questions him, Rajel says it's just a technical error. But Tatiana quickly asks about the hormone fluctuations in Konstantin between day and night. She suspects they're feeding the creature something without disclosing it to her. Rajel warns her that she should leave while she still has the chance. But Tatiana realizes he wants a Nobel Prize and offers to help him achieve it without any fame for herself. She asks Rajel to provide the missing information without telling Colonel Semiradov. Rajel agrees, hides Tatiana in his car, and secretly takes her to the restricted area of the facility. Meanwhile, Konstantin is injected with a tranquilizer, knocked unconscious, and brought back to the observation room. Rajel parks the car inside the facility, gives Tatiana a night vision goggles, and reminds her that the battery only lasts for 10 minutes. He leaves the car, and Tatiana sees a huge cage. A group of soldiers is unloading a prisoner from the truck and locking him in the cage. They turn off the lights, all wearing night vision goggles. The creature has left Konstantin's body and is lured to the cage. Tatiana observes from the car as the creature approaches the prisoner, leaps onto him, and tears his head apart. Tatiana accidentally makes a noise, causing a soldier to hear and move closer. Rajel quickly distracts him, preventing Tatiana from being discovered. He then drives her back to the dormitory and gives her some water along with additional information. Rajel reveals that the creature feeds on cortisol, a fear hormone released in the brain. However, the idea of feeding the creature with live humans came from Colonel Semiradov. Tatiana got out of the car and called Rajel a coward. The next day, Tatiana invited Konstantin to go for a run. During the run, she talked about the creature and said they needed government help to separate him from it. Konstantin suddenly turned back and told her to check if they were being followed, then to meet him at his dorm room at 1 a.m. That night, Konstantin took his medication from the nurse, but vomited as soon as they left. He crushed the pills, mixed them into tea, and left his room. Konstantin invited the nurse to watch a movie with him, causing her to fall asleep on his shoulder. He dismantled the TV, took out the magnets inside, and then met Tatiana. Konstantin used the magnets to jam the surveillance cameras, forcing the guards to check. When the guards found nothing, they were able to move freely through the monitors. Konstantin and Tatiana went to the freezer room where the bodies were stored. Konstantin saw the body scan images of himself there. Tatiana asked if he could feel the creature inside him, and he replied that he was the creature. He could remember every detail of what it had seen. Konstantin said that if Semiradov knew this, he would never let him go. He discovered his fellow cosmonaut was there, still alive. Konstantin begged Tatiana to help him endure 2 more weeks at the facility until the evaluation board from Moscow arrived and he could be freed. Tatiana asked how he could bear the creature killing people for another 2 weeks. Konstantin asked her what she would do if she were in his position. Would she commit suicide? Tatiana answered honestly, yes, because she didn't want to be complicit in murder to feed the creature, nor did she want to slowly die there. Konstantin, after everything he had been through, only wanted to live and reunite with his son. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Konstantin's son tried to grab a package but was caught by the nurse. She scolded him, calling him useless, which caused the boy great distress. Back at the research facility, Tatiana was on her way back to her room when 2 soldiers stopped her and forced her to the office of Colonel Semiradov. They argued about the ethics of using the creature, with Semiradov insisting that what he was doing was right to protect peace. Tatiana disagreed, saying that sacrificing people was unnecessary. Semiradov responded by revealing that the prisoners used to feed the creature were dangerous criminals. He suggested that Tatiana come with him to observe one of the feeding sessions to see for herself. In the feeding area, 2 prisoners were placed in a cage, and the creature was released. It slowly approached them, and Tatiana begged Semiradov to stop, promising to find another way to feed it. Finally, she suggested that she go into the cage with the creature. Unexpectedly, she began singing the song she had heard Konstantin sing earlier. The creature was immediately drawn to her and moved closer. Rajal and Semiradov watched from a distance, and Rajal was stunned to discover that the creature had adapted and was capable of hearing. As Tatiana sang, Konstantin in his room also reacted strongly. He was no longer unconscious, seemingly connecting with what was happening. One of the prisoners tried to untie his restraints, but the creature heard the noise and lunged at him, killing him instantly. After the feeding, Colonel Semiradov asked Tatiana if Konstantin could control the creature. She answered that not yet, but with her help he might be able to. Semiradov believed that, in the end, they would find a way to control the creature and suggested they put aside their differences and cooperate. The next day, Tatiana was working in her room with Konstantin's teammates when Rajel entered. She spoke to him in Latin, asking for his help in helping her and Konstantin escape. Initially, Rajel refused, but Tatiana urged him to be braver. Rajel then brought the sedative she needed, but insisted that she not reveal that he had helped. Tatiana approached the guard and injected him with the sedative, rendering him unconscious. She asked Rajel for help once more. This time, he agreed and accompanied her to Konstantin's room. Upon entering, Tatiana found Konstantin lying on the floor. She told him that the colonel would stop at nothing to keep the creature here. She also revealed that she had figured out a way to separate the creature from him by injecting a mixture of drugs designed to simulate a specific illness. However, Konstantin refused, fearing that the creature had adapted and would survive outside of him. He also believed that the creature had saved his life and told Tatiana that she should run because the creature had chosen him as punishment for abandoning his son. Tatiana mentioned the name and age of his son, which caused Konstantin to change his mind and agree to help her. Rajel told them that a car was waiting outside and handed her the keys. Tatiana invited Rajel to come along, but he decided to stay behind. As they left, Rajel entered the colonel's office to call the authorities, providing them with information about the research facility. Meanwhile, another soldier discovered that the guard had been sedated. They checked the security footage and saw Tatiana and Konstantin running away. The colonel ordered an immediate response team to capture Konstantin and eliminate Tatiana. The response team quickly located them and came to a halt. In the office, Rajal was still on the phone when someone tried to enter the room. He quickly ended the call. When the colonel entered the room, he immediately killed Rajal. At the same time, Tatiana and Konstantin were evading the soldiers. When Konstantin asked for the syringe with the drug, Tatiana threw the syringe at him and injected the drug into his heart. The creature left Konstantin's body, facing the soldiers. They shot at the creature, but it began attacking and killing them. Tatiana dragged Konstantin to a car, and they escaped from the facility. Eventually, the colonel arrived to confront the creature. He released a smoke bomb and then shot him. Both were injured, but the colonel continued firing. Meanwhile, Konstantin coughed up blood in the car. Tatiana realized he wouldn't survive without the creature inside him. Konstantin said they could still escape, but she pulled him out of the car. The colonel caught up and asked her if she had changed her mind. Tatiana replied that they had become a completely symbiotic entity and could not be separated. When the soldiers took the creature out of the truck, the colonel dropped the gun she was holding and the soldiers opened the creature's cage. The colonel knocked her unconscious, but Constantine had gained control of the creature and it killed the soldiers. Constantine continued to chase the colonel and killed him. Tatiana approached to check if Constantine was still alive when the creature crawled toward them. It didn't kill her, but instead returned to merge with Constantine's body. She told him that she could separate them if she took him to Moscow. Suddenly, Constantine committed suicide just as the authorities Rogel had called arrived. Tatiana then set off for Rostov, where she would go to the orphanage to find Constantine's son. In a flashback, the child returned to take the gift package. Eventually, the nurse recognized its persistence and handed the gift to it. The child opened it and found a pair of sneakers inside. Tatiana entered the orphanage, met the receptionist, and said that she was there to adopt Constantine's son. At the same time, the child was wearing the sneakers and stood up from the wheelchair. The nurse said everything would be fine, and the child turned to her, saying his name was Tatiana. Currently, Tatiana is waiting outside the door for the child. It came out, she greeted and embraced it. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thank you for following.